All right, this story is a fun story. This story makes me smile. So Cenk Uygur went on, I think it's called the PBD podcast. The guy who's the host is, he also does a YouTube channel, I think, called Valuetainment. He strikes me as, I don't know if he would describe himself as like a motivational YouTuber, or if he would describe himself as like probably like more like a business and entrepreneurial type YouTuber. And so Cenk sat down for a conversation with him, and actually the whole interview was actually a very interesting interview, and there were certain parts where the host pushed back on Cenk, and Cenk responds. But anyway, so Cenk is asked about that now very infamous tweet where he basically said, like, hey, I could...
On Rogan, to your the specific question, so now I have animosity with Rogan, but yeah, I was largely trolling them. Like, and I said it very clearly too, never in the streets, never any violence. Violence is crazy. But I was saying, if you want to step in the ring,
I mean, obviously, you know what would happen if you stepped in the ring. You're not naive.
So would Joe have a massive advantage? Obviously, look at me. I'm 52. I'm very overweight, etc. But by the way, I don't think it would be a foregone conclusion.
Oh, you think you could take Joe?
Okay. Now,
are you saying you can take Rogan?
Okay.
Throw one kick and decide you'd be peeing blood for a week. Have you seen his kicks?
I've seen his kicks. Okay. So listen.
I appreciate your confidence, though. I got to tell you.
No, but I'll tell you why I do it. Okay. So look, number one, I'm okay. A trained person is of course better, and by a lot, right? So, and a guy who's in shape is supposed to a guy not in shape by a lot. So I would do tons of training, etc., and I'd still be a massive underdog. Okay, but I'm a brawler. And so it's not just that I fought my whole life when I was growing up, etc. It's the will in you, right? So if he's going to beat me, he's going to have to beat me.
He will beat you, though.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah,
and that's a fair conclusion to reach, okay? But my point is, I'm tired of people running over the left wing, okay? So if you're going to say we're weak, then fuck off and step in the ring, okay? So step in the ring ideologically. That is what I would greatly prefer. By the way, I did this with Michael Smirkonish a long time ago on a HuffPost, right? Mm-hmm. He's talking shit about, the wussification of America. And I was like, all right, bitch, then either get in the ring from a debate point of view or get in the octagon or whatever you want, right? Because you're saying we're wussies, and I'm saying I'll kick the shit out of you, okay? So you tell me, you know what Michael Smirkonish did? He ran like a bitch, okay? And he went and cried to mommy, and he said, "Oh my God, he's threatening me." No, I said, "Look, I would never do it in the streets. That's nuts." Okay, I'm 100% against violence, but you're not going to call us weak and get away with it. We're going to stand a goddamn post, and that's why the Young Turks are hated by the right wing, because we do not back down. We punch back. So the whole point there, Patrick, is rhetorical. I'm punching back rhetorically.
Yeah, but and by the way, that was how I took it.
Yes.
But that's not how the world took it. I'm sure you know that. There's a part of that was marketing. I get that.
That was an awesome clip. That was fascinating to watch. So now look, from my perspective, I am literally the most biased human being on earth to talk about this, because I know Cenk personally. I've known him for years. And I know Joe personally. I've known him for years. And so in a weird way, it's like my commentary should be the fastest to be discarded on this, because, I know them both. So to me, it's not just like, two media figures going at it. To me, it's like, that's a dude I know well, and that's a dude I know well. And I'm watching this thing unfold. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? So anyway, let's go through it. At the beginning, Cenk starts with, I was trolling. Okay. And, the host says, well, that's how I took it, but most people took it quite literally. Now, I want to show you the tweet, and you can make up your own mind, so throw that up there, guys. So somebody says to Cenk, I'll make you a $1,000 donation to your trash network or your charity of choice to see you call Rogan, who is not only the most successful podcast in history, but also a black belt in mixed martial arts, a loser to his face. This was in response, I guess, to Cenk saying something to Rogan, tweeting that he's a loser or something like that. I don't know what the tweet that was before this. No, go back to it. And then Cenk says, deal, easiest $1,000 I ever made. You think he's going to assault me? Sure, whatever. That's incredibly dumb, but also wouldn't work. I'm much larger than Joe, and I fought my whole life. I'd end him. But grown-ups don't do that. I'll send you the P.O. box to send check to later. Okay. So I don't know. You take that for what it's worth. But look, whether he's trolling or whether he's serious, it's still a really silly thing to say. Because Joe Rogan is a black belt in martial arts. There's videos all over the internet of him, like, punching and kicking, and he's a grappler too. He knows jujitsu, which is, from what I understand, the most effective of the various fighting styles. Like, he got all these different. He did taekwondo when he was younger, but like, there's taekwondo, there's kung fu, there's whatever, fill in the blank, all these different things. Jujitsu is apparently the best, and I think he's a black belt in jujitsu, and he's a trained fighter. And Cenk keeps going back and forth there between, like, I'm trolling, like, I'm just joking, I'm largely trolling, to, well, I didn't mean actual violence, never in the street, never violence. And then he starts having the conversation about if it was a real fight. He says, yeah, Joe has a massive advantage, I'm 52 and overweight, but it's not a foregone conclusion. He said, quote, I'm a brawler, it's about the will in you. This reminds me of a story that my dad told me a long time ago. Obviously, my dad's been dead for a while, but he told me a story that still sticks with me to this day about how he went to go get his wisdom teeth removed. And he just got the Novocaine. He didn't go under. Some people go under for their wisdom teeth. I went under when I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, but he didn't go under. He just had the Novocaine, so he was awake when it was happening. They took out the wisdom teeth, and they gave him a prescription. Like, here's some painkillers. You're going to need them later on today. And my dad walked out of the dentist's office, and my dad, look, I loved him. He was not the brightest guy in the world. My dad thought to himself, I got to get to work. I don't want to take the time to go to the pharmacy and fill the prescription. And so I'll be fine. I'll just go to work and I'll be good. And in his mind, he thought, look, it's about my will. It's mind over matter. And so I could just sort of, I know it might feel a little uncomfortable, but I can override the pain through my mind. And so he went to work, and he ended up like collapsing in the hallway in the most excruciating pain he ever had in his life as soon as the Novocaine wore off and he felt the pain. And, that was his way of saying, look, mind over matter isn't a thing. Like, sure, can a tough will help you in many situations? Yeah. But is it also irrelevant in some situations? Yeah. If the plane is crashing, doesn't matter how much you, think positive thoughts and try to, like, maybe I'll tuck myself in a little ball and I won't get incinerated in the explosion. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. This is one of those situations. Like, yes, he is a trained fighter. He knows how to fuck people up. And to go against literally any non-trained fighter is going to get draxed, son. Is going to get draxed. So but now let's get to the other portion of it, because this is actually the more interesting part. I think to this point, everything I've said is largely agreeable and fairly objective. I think most people watching this would agree, except maybe Cenk, but most people would say, yeah, the trained fighter is always going to beat the non-trained fighter. That's just the way the world works. You can't will your way out of that. That's not how the world functions. By the way, my dad learned that lesson when he was like in his 30s. It's like, really? It took you till your fucking 30s to understand that you can't like override physical pain from getting your tooth pulled with just like, I will not feel this pain. But he goes on to say, quote, I'm tired of people, Cenk does, I'm tired of people running over the left wing. Step in the ring ideologically. I meant rhetorically. So let's put aside for a second the whole like physical aspect. We already addressed that. To this notion of like, I think the thing that I wince at is this notion of like, Joe Rogan is just right wing, full stop. Now, look, sometimes does he take some positions that are right wing? Absolutely. I think that's clear. There's been a number of examples of that. Sometimes does like the emphasis of his show and the focus on the things that he talks about, does that in some ways end up, quote unquote, helping the right? I think you can make that argument. I think that Joe and his guests, and Joe would even admit this, I think, some very, very large percentage of the time, the conversations come back to like wokeness bad, cancel culture bad, and wokeness and cancel culture are perpetuated by the left. And so like by extension, isn't the left crazy? Haven't they lost their mind? Aren't they bad? Like I do think that makes up a significant portion, a large chunk of Joe's show. And you could say that ends up maybe in some instances misleading people into a broader right-wing movement with a whole bunch of other ideas that go hand in hand with it and policies that go hand in hand with it that are really deleterious and not good. I think all that's fair. But I also think nuance is fucking important. And when you talk about Joe Rogan, there was that famous video that we played on this show. They played it on Breaking Points of Joe's lefty moments that were sort of spliced back to back. It was to try to counter this notion. Yes, you could take all of Joe's worst jokes and worst moments and splice them back to back and make the fucking guy look like Rush Limbaugh. Is that a fair thing to do? No. Now, by the same token, is it really a fair thing to do to only show his left-wing moments and say this defines him? No. Both of the fucking things matter, is my point. And so, sure, we could have a conversation about, hey, which ideas that he puts out there, which policies that he puts out there, or what about his focus and his emphasis leans right. That's a fair conversation. Some of those things are going to lean right. But there's also so many things that lean left. I mean, the guy had on Bernie Sanders and Cornel West, and he had on Killer Mike and me, and I don't know if it was with Bernie or with Cornel West. I think it was with Cornel West where he said it was like one of his favorite conversations on the podcast ever. And in the ORF compilation, there were examples of him, talking about support universal health care, support a living wage, who wants to end the war, of course, wants to legalize marijuana. The thing that I hate is the war on nuance, that now all of that doesn't matter because he focuses on wokeness too much or gets obsessed with certain right-wing issues and spends a lot of time on that. Now, look, do I wish there was maybe more quote-unquote balance in the show where maybe the conversations where he has left-wing opinions, he has more of those conversations and puts more of an emphasis on his left-wing views, perhaps? Sure. But Joe's his own person. He's his own man. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants. I can't micromanage or steer the show. Neither can Cenk. But I find it disingenuous to just say, he's right-wing. And it would also be disingenuous just to say he's left-wing. He's got a mix of views, and he's heterodox. And he doesn't view himself as part of some broader right-wing project. And I don't think it's an accurate commentary or fair commentary to say this. So the way Cenk looks at it is he says, I'm tired of people running over the left wing, step into the ring ideologically, rhetorically. And it's but the guy who you're screaming at to get in the ring ideologically and rhetorically doesn't even agree with the shit that you think he agrees with. He's not some avatar of right-wing politics. He's not. He's not fucking Sean Hannity. He's not. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me about Cenk's commentary is that at some point, it really became very just super partisan and tribal and super ideological of if you don't check all the boxes I want you to check, I'm just going to say you're part of the opposing team or camp. And I just think that's sloppy intellectually. And of course, he is also the most popular podcaster on the planet. And the only way you're going to win people, not just Joe himself, but the only way you're going to win people in his audience is to actually be convincing and intelligent and to make the case in a way that doesn't immediately isolate them and shame them and make them feel well, Cenk thinks Joe's a piece of shit and Joe's my guy, so no, now I think Cenk's a piece of shit. It's just unnecessarily divisive and incredibly counterproductive to the goal of the thing that I believe in, which is let's actually spread left-wing values and change minds. And so I think that's what frustrates me about this the most, is that it just strikes me as really sloppy and unnuanced to pretend like Joe Rogan is some avatar of right-wing politics. He's obviously a more complicated guy than that. And there's obviously more to him and more to that than that. And look, when I'm on the show, if Joe says something that I think is, an opinion I disagree with, and it's a right-leaning thing that I disagree with, I say it to his face. And that's the way it should be. The idea of lobbing bombs, saying you'd fight him from a distance, and this lumping him into a camp that he doesn't even feel like he's in, and wagging your finger at him and saying you'll kick his ass. In real life, no, rhetorically and metaphorically. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. But look, at the end of the day, on a personal level, Cenk is actually a lovely guy. He's actually a lovely guy. He's a funny guy. He's a loyal guy, too. I think he gives people a lot of chances. And oftentimes that unfortunately goes negatively for him. And so I still think Cenk means well. And I still think he's effectively speaking from his heart. I just think sometimes it misfires. And with a situation like this, I mean, look, you could see how apoplectic the hosts are talking to Cenk there. Like, it's psycho to say, it's just psycho to say you can beat up Joe Rogan in a fight. But then beyond that, it is also kind of crazy to just say he's right-wing, full stop. As if it's not way more complex than that, way more nuanced than that, as if Joe doesn't have views that are all over the spectrum and sort of heterodox in many respects. There you have it. Cenk Uygur dives back into the pool of the conversation about having an altercation with Joe Rogan, and I'm sure this will give many people content for days. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.